Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening, Dr. Paul from Laguna, Niguel. Give big applause. Thanks, Steve.
Oh, it says, yeah, give applause. Good evening. My name is Paul, and I'm a full-blown alcoholic. And I'm glad to be here. Alcoholics always say that. They're glad to be any place sober. And I'm glad you're here. Sure be a dull meeting for me if you weren't. And I feel like the Grim Reaper, though, that was talking about. Bill asked me to come and talk so they could have a group conscious to see whether or not they're going to continue the meeting since it was falling off. And I remembered I was invited to talk at the Sonora, Arizona, Sedona, Arizona Roundup one year. A beautiful place in a big natural amphitheater, and it was beautiful. And I talked there, and after I talked, they closed it down. They've never had a meeting there since. It was a famous meeting till then. I hate to be the last speaker at this meeting now. But he was saying that they were going to have a group conscience, and because the meeting was falling off, and I thought, gee, if it keeps falling off, it's hard to have a group conscience if you don't have a group. But he was saying they had been getting local speakers, and over the years I've seen two meetings I can think of offhand that have completely died out because they had local speakers. I don't know why that should be that way, but in my experience, that's the way it is. But in fact, when I first came around in the early years, I used to go down to the Thursday night Brentwood workshop. And the workshop was have a speaker and then question and answer period from 7 to 8, and then they'd have a speaker meeting at 8:30 till 10. And very few people, just the newcomers and a few others, came to the workshop, and it was mobbed for the speaker meeting. But they were getting prominent speakers in for the workshop because they wanted people who could answer the questions and keep the thing moving. And the more they did that, the more popular that became. And now the workshop is mobbed, and after the workshop, everybody goes home. Nobody stays for the speaker meeting. In fact, they take down all the chairs except the first 2 or 3 rows, and the rest of the auditorium is empty. And I was thinking about that before the meeting. When I was sober at the Canyon Club on Thursday night, they used to have a speaker question and answer meeting, and it was very well attended. It was very popular. And they got a secretary in that's been sober a long time, and what she said made sense. She says, it doesn't matter who the speaker is as long as they're a sober alcoholic. You can't argue with that logic. But the only problem was that the meeting fell apart. They don't have it anymore. And I've seen that a number of times. But I remember when this used to be a big speaker meeting that people were standing all the way around the halls. It was just mobbed. In fact, in the summertime, the doors were open and people would be outside in the hall. But I guess then the hospital was complaining that there's too much noise. They couldn't. So I don't know what the answer is to all this. Don't even know how I got into that. I know how I got into it, but I don't know how to get out of it. I know what I'll do. I'll congratulate the birthday people. I think that was great. Happy birthday to you, and congratulations to the CHIP people, and welcome to the newcomers. We're glad you're here. We're really glad you're here. In fact, we're so glad you're here, we don't even care that you're not glad you're here. Bill W., one of the 2 co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, said that carrying the message of recovery is our primary aim and the chief reason for our existence. And I thought, wow, that's a primary aim and the chief reason for our existence. And when he says our existence, is he referring to us as individuals or us as groups, or both? But apparently there's nothing more important we can do than carry the message of recovery. And we carry that to each other, and especially to people that are new. it's more fun carrying it to the newcomers. In fact, I've always said that I keep coming back to AA even if it wasn't keeping me sober, just to watch what happens to the newcomers and their whole families, and because it really is a family disease. So as I say, we're really glad you're here, and we're glad you stood up and said you were a newcomer. We want to welcome you, and we want to welcome the people who should have stood up but didn't, because I know there are some of those around. I didn't stand up. I didn't think it was anybody's business whether I had a beer or two. And I wasn't staying sober during the time I wasn't standing up either, which may have had something to do with that. One thing I noticed missing at this meeting, I haven't seen anything about court cards. You have court cards? How many do you have? 2 court cards. The reason I asked that is court cards are not part of AA, but we do that as a service to the courts. I guess we want to stay friendly with the courts or something. I don't know. But I was at a meeting up in Riverside one time talking, and the meeting must have been close to a courthouse or something. And there, when you're going to talk, you sit up at a head table with the secretary and the recorder and all the important people. And but not having anything else to do while I was waiting to talk, there's a basket there with the court cards in it, and I counted them. And there were 21 court cards in that basket. But there was only one newcomer. And so ever since then, I've gotten in the habit of welcoming the non-alcoholic drunk drivers. We're really glad you're here. And I, for one, hope you stay here till I get home. Anyway, it's the way it goes. And I used to drink, but I wasn't an alcoholic. I was on a plane the other day, and it was a really smallish commercial plane. It had just one aisle down the center. And as you're taking off, they say, well, when we get to cruising altitude, we'll come through the cart and give you your favorite beverage. And so we got up to where we were supposed to be, and they started the cart down through the aisle, and there was a girl attendant on one side and a man attendant on the other, and they're moving the thing down the aisle. And I'm sitting on the aisle on one side, and Max, my wife, is on the aisle on the other side. And you're all packed together, so you can hear everything that's going on. And they get the cart down, and the girl gives me a little cocktail napkin and a bag of peanuts. And she says, and what would you like to drink, sir? And I said, I'd like club soda with a lemon twist. And she says, club soda with a twist? She said, thank you, sir. And she picks a nice soda and set it down. And she moved the cart a few inches back further along the plane to the guy behind me. And she said, gave him his napkin and his bag of peanuts. And she says, and what would you like to drink, sir? And he says, I'd like white wine. She says, white wine, thank you, sir. And she went through her cart, pulled out all the drawers, couldn't find any white wine. And she turned to the mail attendant, and as I say, everybody could hear everything everybody else was saying. And she says to the mail attendant, she says, do we have any white wine? And he said, no, we don't have any white wine, but we got plenty of red wine. And she turned to the man behind me and she said, sir, we don't have any white wine. Would you like red wine? He had to think about it. I turned around to see if he was still back there. I couldn't figure out what had happened to the man. And, until he hesitated, as I said this the other day, until he hesitated, it had never occurred to me what a serious social blunder it would be to drink the wrong color wine with airline peanuts. My favorite white wine was Thunderbird. I didn't. Which is another story with airline. Every airline has its own magazine that they'd like for you to pick it up and read it and take it with you. So American Airlines, I think it's American Way or something. And I was looking through this thing, and there's a department there that says Best Buys. And the woman every month lists what she thinks are the best audio, best video, best movie, best play, best book, best this, best that, and under best drinks, she had the best wines. And what she said was that the 1992 Napa Valley Chardonnay have a crisp pear apple flavor with a touch of clove at the end. Now, ever since I read that, what I've been looking for is somebody who is planning a slip. So when you're out there, you might check on it for me. It's the 1992 Napa Valley Chardonnay. I really don't care that much about the crisp pear apple flavor, but I really would like to know if it leaves you with a touch of clove at the end. Thunderbird never left me with a touch of clove. I don't know. I always thought I was a pretty good wine drinker, but of course I drank just anything I could get. No, I didn't drink anything I could get. I started out with 2 beers to get to sleep at night. I'd go to school all day, work in the family drugstore at night, and jump in bed and study before going to bed, and then jump in bed and be half awake and half asleep, and in the morning I'd be both tired and stupid. And I found out I could drink a couple of beers, jump in bed, sleep real fast, and wake up smart. And that's the way I went through school. And the longer I went through school, the more I drank. And the more I drank, the more I had side effects, so that it was... I don't remember every chemical I used worked. The problem was that every time it worked, I was more dependent on it. If I couldn't get to sleep without it, and I used it and it worked, that meant that I couldn't get I was more likely to have trouble getting to sleep without it. And so I became more and more dependent on it, and over time it took more and more of the chemical to get the effect, and the effect lasted for a shorter and shorter period of time, so it had to be repeated at increasingly shorter intervals. And over a period of time it had side effects, so I had to have other chemicals counteract side effects from that. Boy, when they were talking about it being a progressive disease, it really was. And I grew up in the drugstore from the age of 4, where my father was a neighborhood druggist, and back in those days before Medicare, and that people didn't run to their doctor every time they got sick. They went to their friendly neighborhood pharmacy, and they told him their symptoms, and he would tell them something to make them well, something to make them well, or something to make them not care that they weren't getting well, which is what doctors do today. And so I grew up knowing that if there's something wrong in your life, you're not feeling well, there's some chemical somewhere you can get that's going to make you feel better. And so better living through chemistry has been a way of life for me all the way through. And in fact, I remember way back in those days, many years before I became an alcoholic, I would go to, living in a small town and being in a drugstore, you had to be part of the community, which meant you had to go to the church dinner dances. I don't like church dinner dances. There's a lot of people at church dinner dances. You have to talk to people. You have to chit-chat. You have to do a lot of chit-chat. I don't like to chit-chat. I'm not a good chit-chatter. And you have to dance at the church dinner dances. You can't not dance at a church dinner dance, because every church dinner dance has at least one hyperactive woman. You're sitting there minding your own business, and she comes running up to you and says, "Come on, Paul, let's dance." And you very politely say, "No, thank you, I can't dance." And they say, "Oh, sure you can." And they drag you out on the floor and prove to the whole world that you can't dance. And I didn't know that I was doing it at the time, but what I found out, I would have a few drinks before I'd go to church dinner dance. You can't not drink at a church dinner dance, because if you don't drink, they'll know you have a problem. But on the other hand, you have to be very careful, because they count your drinks at a church dinner dance. So I would have drinks before I went to the thing, and then I would have a drink while I was there, and that would relax me. It would relax me mentally and physically. I didn't really realize that I was doing it so much, but in retrospect, I can see that it would relax me mentally and physically. It would relax me mentally, and I could chit-chat. It's really good chit-chatter. I could give chit-chat lessons to people. I was a good chit-chatter then. But and then too, it would relax me physically, and it would relax me physically, and I could dance. I could really dance. I could give dancing lessons. I really could relax me physically and relax me mentally. The problem that arose was that those two got out of sync. It got to where I wouldn't have even begun to relax mentally yet, and I'd get too relaxed physically. It would maybe affect my speech, and I would slur, and I would talk slowly and deliberately, so nobody would notice. Or I would trip when there was nothing. I would find myself lying there, just looking very serene. And I think, get up, you fool! People will think you're drunk. And my mind would say, what do you mean, get up? We're paralyzed from the ears down, And I would lie there and think, isn't that strange? That you'd be paralyzed from the ears down with what little you've had to drink. And you must be very sensitive to this stuff or something. We'll have to ask somebody about that sometime. I was in pharmacy school at the time, and I guess I was thinking like an allergy professor or something like that. And I never found anybody to ask, so you can't ask a question like that of just anybody, because they're liable, darn fools are liable to say, well, I don't know why it does that, but if it did that to me, I just wouldn't drink it. But I didn't want to know what to do about it. I just want to know why it did that to me. And just the opposite would happen. I wouldn't have even got relaxed physically yet, and I'd be doing things, and my mind would be like all my brain cells would get together and say, oh, what the hell? He's drinking anyway. Let's go on home. And go on doing things. And I had no idea what. I would have no idea what I did or how I got home from doing what I was doing. And I used to wonder about that. In fact, I've never found out how to recall something that wasn't recorded at the time that it happened. And I don't. I quit worrying about that once I heard Cliff R. down in Oceanside say that he used to worry about what he'd done on his during blackouts, until he came to the realization that he never ever had come out of a blackout to find that he had spent the night helping the Little Sisters of the Poor. And so I stopped trying to figure it out too as to what I was doing. But anyway, the other thing that helped me with the program is I had a bashful bladder. And that is a real inconsistency to be an alcoholic with a bashful bladder. That's a sad tale. But in fact, that's another thing I've often said. Geez, I'd come back to AA if it wasn't keeping me sober, just for what it's done for my bladder. Not that my capacity is any better. My capacity for AA coffee is no better than it was for booze. So my capacity is no better. But my aim has improved tremendously, and I like that. My wife likes that too. So anyhow, I ended up a couple times not taking anything to get to sleep at night, not drinking at all. And in the morning I had a grand mal convulsion, and I thought, well, I didn't have anything to drink last night, so drinking had nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, I was making my living as a diagnostician, an internist, and I was having headaches and convulsions. I had acute pancreatitis and severe weight loss, daily headaches. sense of impending insanity, and I knew I was getting sicker and sicker, and I thought, geez, I need a good medical workup. I needed a good diagnostician. Well, I happened to be the best diagnostician I knew, and so I sat down and had a consultation with me, and went over all my symptoms and the lab work, and it was rather obvious. I had a brain tumor. And, there's nothing funny about a brain tumor. And I would die and you'd all be sorry, by God. In fact, and as a matter of fact, I was under the care of the most prominent neurologist in Orange County. And he was giving me Dilantin and phenobarbital for epilepsy. He didn't think to ask me if I drank, and I didn't think to tell him. And he ended up sending me to the Mayo Clinic to have them diagnose my brain tumor. And I spent 9 days going through the clinic over there. Went in the last day to get my lab report, and instead of them just giving me my reports, they said there was one thing more. I needed to see the staff psychiatrist. And I thought, geez, that's a funny place to look for my brain tumor. But they'd looked a lot of other funny places for my brain tumor. And I went to see the psychiatrist because I didn't have any better chance. And the next thing I knew, he took me over to the nut ward, and that's where the steel door slammed shut. And my wife was the one that walked out. I'd always thought I'd been sending her to psychiatrists. I thought she'd be the one that would end up being locked up. What I found out was that she had told them the night before she went over and told them that I was taking stuff to get to sleep at night. And years later, another doctor heard my story at IDAA, International Doctors and Alcoholics Anonymous. Isn't that a fancy name for 2,000 doctors trying to stay sober in AA? He heard my story, and he worked at the Mayo Clinic. He went to the record room. He's not allowed to do this, but he did it anyway, and he got the letter that the neurosurgeon at the Mayo Clinic had sent to the neurologist who sent me to the Mayo Clinic, and it said that Dr. Oliger suffers from a disease or a condition for which too many of in our profession suffer from, and one for which we really have no ready answer. And he wouldn't have even referred me to AA or whatever at the time if I hadn't signed on. The reason my mind got confused, that when I got back to California, because I signed out of there, they didn't treat me right. I went to go back to California, but he treated with more respect. And I saw the neurologist. He referred me to a psychiatrist, Dr. David Geddes, over in 17th Street in Santa Ana. And Geddes sent me to AA. And the interesting thing about him was that he's not an alcoholic. And I asked him why he's so interested in alcoholism. And he said that when he was an intern, just beginning to become training for psychiatry, somebody got the idea that he'd be a better psychiatrist if he went to some AA meetings. And so as a student, in a sense, he was sent to a couple of AA meetings. And he was so impressed with what he saw there. What I'm talking about is the tremendous power of this program. The tremendous power of this program. From those couple of meetings, he got so interested in what AA does that's been his favorite thing as a psychiatrist now, is to run around with his butterfly net and capture alcoholics and send them to AA. And he won't even see them for the first year or so. He says he will not try to do for them what he knows AA can do better. And after a year or two, if they're still flaky enough and he thinks he can help them, then he'll see them and see what he can do. Well, the point was that the International Doctors in AA, one time I was on a panel with 4 other doctors and a leader of the group. So there were 5 of us, 5 doctors. And there's myself and another doctor that I had 12-step, and the others would all been either captured by one of us or by Dr. Geddes. And at that time, all 5 of us were working full-time in the field of alcoholism chemical dependency. all as a result of this non-psychiatrist going to 2 AA meetings. And to me, it shows the power of this program. I remember a gal named Wilma. She was basically a streetwalker, and she had a date with this man, and she was waiting for him in a bar, and he was late getting there. And he finally came hurrying in, and apologized for being late, and he says, "I'm sorry I'm late." And he says, more than that, he says, "I'm an alcoholic, and I've got to get back to AA, and I'm going right now. I can't go out with you. I got to go to this meeting. You want to come along with me?" And she said, "What the hell?" And she put on her gloves, she said, finished her drink, went to the AA meeting, just never had a drink since. You know, and yeah, I find that fascinating. I used to fantasize that I don't particularly like to travel. I'm not afraid of traveling. I just find it boring. I don't like making connections. But I figured if they were willing to give me the Nobel Prize in medicine, the least I could do would be to go to Norway or Sweden or wherever it is and pick it up. And what they would be giving it to me for would be because I had the cure for cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, and I'm not particular what it would be. But all it would require would be for God to give me the information so I could put that out and I'd be famous. And when I get the Nobel Prize for that discovery, I was going to give all the credit to God. I was going to make God famous. The only thing was he had to make me famous first. And to me it sounded like quite a bargain, because he already knows what I needed to know. All he had to do was tell me. I thought it was, but he never bought it. He not only didn't make me famous, he made me anonymous. And yet today, you know, I stop and think about what we talk about here is the diagnosis and treatment for one of the greatest medical problems in the whole world. People out there are literally dying by the millions for lack of knowledge of what we talk about here at meetings. And I find that real exciting. I find that exciting. And I run into young people who are bored. And I think, God, how could you be bored when we have this knowledge that is so needed, and we can share our experience and save life doing it. And so anyhow, but after all that profundity, I ended up in the nut ward here at St. Joseph's Hospital. And they wanted me to make leather belts. I didn't want to make leather belts. I didn't feel like going to school all those years just to learn how to make leather belts. And besides, I didn't understand the instructions. I remember sitting there pouting because there was nothing to do in this dumb thing. In fact, it was a big waiting room. You couldn't stay in bed. You had to get up, and then you had to go sit in the waiting room. And a big waiting room, and one whole wall was windows and glass. And on the other side of that glass was the walkway, the main walkway for the hospital. Go right over here to the corner, and that was the main entrance to the hospital. And I could just see my patients walking by, and looking in. "Oh, hi, Dr. Paul. How are things in the nut ward?" You know, it wasn't funny at all. I was sitting there thinking of the series of mistakes and misdiagnoses and poor medical management and bad breaks that a nice guy like me ended up in a place like that. And this Geddes walked up behind me and wanted to know if I'd be willing to talk to a man from Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, God almighty, don't I have enough problems of my own without trying to help some drunk from AA? But I can tell by looking in his face that he thought it was a good idea. And I don't know if you know it or not, but happiness on a nut ward is having a happy psychiatrist. And I was willing to go to any length to make him happy. And so I said yes, and In no time, this clown comes galloping into the room, yelling at the top of his voice, "My name is Frank, and I'm an alcoholic." I was embarrassed for him. The only thing he had to brag about was the fact he was an alcoholic. Anyhow, he ended up with a long, interminable story. He says, "Well, that's my story. Would you like to? I'm going to meeting tonight. Would you like to go along?" I said, "Hell no, I won't like it, but I'll go," because I knew he'd go back and squeal to the psychiatrist. And so we went, and I don't even know how many meetings we went to before I knew what meeting I was at. But I knew that meeting had a profound effect on the psychiatrist. He was now very interested in my case, paying a lot more attention to me now, a lot of questions. Want to know, what's this about a book? What's this about steps? What's this about meetings? How often do they have meetings? What other kind of meetings do they have? When do you go to the meeting again? I thought, God almighty, I've got me an alcoholic psychiatrist. He's ashamed to go, so he's sending me. Anyhow, he ended up going to meetings. Hospital, I had no intention of going back. Why would I go back? I wasn't an alcoholic. Problem is, my wife liked the meetings. I'd say, "Let's go to the show," and she said, No, let's go to the AA meeting. They're more fun. And so I stayed home on a Saturday night while she went off to AA meeting herself, and that was very boring. And so I had to go back to find out what the alcoholics were laughing about. And I found out that the alcoholics were laughing at themselves, and which is the best kind of humor. No, we don't tell jokes. We just laugh at our own foibles. As the Chinese proverb says, "Blessed are they who can laugh at themselves; they shall never cease to be entertained." And so I guess AA will never run out of humor. We're always doing more stuff to entertain ourselves. But the main thing was that I was bored and ashamed to be in AA. I didn't want the people out there to know I was here. I didn't want you to know I was here. I thought your goals and aspirations were very, very bottom rung. I remember a big, healthy, husky guy stood up to the podium and said, "If I don't drink today, I'm a success today." And I thought, God almighty, big damn deal. Yeah. I was still drinking at the time. But I've always been very proud of my goals. I've always thought I would match my goals with anybody. But eventually, I went to meetings for 7 months. Well, I went to meetings for 7 months, and I did curtail my drinking to the time between meetings. And after 7 months, I went to one meeting too many, and I found myself laughing with the alcoholics, and I haven't had a drink since. And that's the way it's been for me. Laughter has been a very important part of the program for me, and it's a very spiritual part of the program. I had a hard time getting into the steps. I didn't feel I needed those. My church had taken care of all that, and I didn't need to do a fourth and a fifth step and all. But I went to meetings. I saw that I had to go to meetings in order to stay sober. So I stayed sober and went to meetings in order to stay sober long enough to see people who stayed sober on meetings get drunk. I saw people who go to meetings every day and end up drunk. And then I realized that apparently I have to not only go to meetings, but I have to work the steps in order to stay sober. So I continued to go to meetings, and I worked the steps in order to stay sober. And I kept watching other people, and I found other people who went to meetings long enough in order to stay sober, to find out they had to work the steps in order to stay sober, to work the steps in order to stay sober, and then stopped going to meetings and got drunk. And so it seems to me, my observation is, if I want to stay sober, I've got to go to meetings, I've got to do the steps, keep redoing them, live by them, and continue to go to meetings. got a call just 2 days ago from a guy just in his second year who was doing the meetings and doing the steps, and then got busy trying to make money, and money became more important, and he just didn't have time for the meetings, and he got drunk, and he got drunk on a trip and smashed up his car, and now he's got a drunk driving arrest, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. I don't know how to say it, but I'm very indebted to AA's research workers. I was at a meeting the other night. You were there, and it was our meeting, and there was a gal there who was in tears because her friend was drinking, and she felt so terrible for her friend. And I felt bad for her too. I felt bad for both of them. But I got to thinking, I wonder, there were about 60 or 65 people at this meeting, and I wondered how many of us would be here at this meeting if nobody ever went out and got drunk. The person that goes out carries the message too, I guess. And I feel indebted to those who go out. I'm sure rather it be them than me, and I don't want to go back out there. I had too much trouble making it the first time. I don't know what it would happen. So anyhow, I don't plan. I go to meetings. It's been 31 years since my last drink, which is the longest I've ever gone without a drink. 31 years is a long time between drinks for me. And the interesting thing about that is I'm not even thirsty. There's nothing makes me want to drink like having a drink. Other people, when they're thirsty, have a drink and they're satisfied. When I get thirsty and have a drink, then I really need a drink. And if not right then, I know I'll need it soon after. And if I know I can drink and not get drunk, then I know I can drink and not get drunk, so I'll drink whenever I want to until I end up getting drunk. And so it's the first drink that I've got. And we just don't drink one day at a time. This is the day I don't date. That I don't drink. Today is a very important day for me. This is the day I don't drink. I drink tomorrow, but I'm not going to drink today. When tomorrow comes, I'll look at my watch, and if it's today, I won't drink today. Yeah. I was talking about being ashamed to be in AA, and I'm thinking, geez, this is really the bottom of the social barrel. And then I one day got the brilliant thought that if this is the bottom of the social barrel, and these people's goals are so minimal, so minor, if I can't make it here, you're way ahead of me. And that when I realized that became my primary goal, to be a successful member of AA. Because if I can't be a successful member of AA, I can't be anything. And if I can be a successful member of AA, then I can be anything if I want. But it all starts here. If I don't have the foundation, I can't build on anything else. And that's how I ended up getting sober, and that's how I stay sober, and that's how I live my life today. In fact, I will, if I have to make a decision as to what to do, which course to take, should I do this or should I do that? Used to be I would figure out what you would do if I did this and what you would do if I did that, and then my job, what I did would depend on what I thought you were going to do, and that's called a manipulation. And as you already knew, in fact, I heard it said at the meeting, if what you do next is determined by whether or not, the more you try to control another person, the more you're under that person's control. That's what was said. The more you try to control another person, the more you're under that person's control. Because what you do next depends on whether they do or don't do whatever it is you're trying to get them to do or not do, then you're under that person's control. And if you follow that, you're really an alcoholic. And today, what I'll do is after I have a course of action, I'll say, what would an AA winner do? What would a successful member of AA do? Or, what's the loving thing to do? Or, what would God want me to do? All of which are the same question. And if I do, so that ends up that all I have to ask myself is, what's my motive? What's my motive? And if I do a thing for the right motive and leave the results up to God, then there's no manipulation involved. And I only have one half of the equation. I don't have what I'm going to do and then what I think you're going to do. It's just my side, and I don't even have to worry about what I'm going to do. I just have to think about what's my motive. And if love is my motive, love's always the right motive, and I leave the results up to God, things turn out exactly the way they're supposed to. It may not be the way I would have had it turn out, may not be the way you'd have it turn out, but it turns out the way it's supposed to. And I had a hard time accepting my alcoholism because I confused acceptance with approval. I didn't approve of me being an alcoholic, therefore I couldn't accept the fact that I was an alcoholic. I realized today that acceptance has nothing to do with approval. Well, it does in the sense that I find it very easy to accept the realities of my life that I approve of. It's the ones I don't approve of that I have trouble with, but they're still the realities, and I have to accept them. And the more I can do that, the better my life is. I said I would quit early, and it's 9:45, so I quit. And you can now do whatever you're going to do with the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.